The champagne flute rested in my hand, delicate and cold, like a prop in a play I'd been performing for 3 long years. I stood at the head of Douglas Harrington's massive dining table, an imposing slab of polished mahogany that seemed to embody the weight of his family's legacy. Douglas's voice, rich with that particular brand of wealthy condescension, carried across the room, each word dripping with a tone that turned every compliment into a veiled insult. "To my son's wife," he declared, raising his glass with a theatrical pause, proof that not everyone's cut out for the cutthroat world of business. The laughter rippled around the table like a rehearsed chorus. My mother-in-law, Margaret, let out her signature tinkling giggle, a sound as delicate as crystal, but sharp enough to cut. My brother-in-law, James, snorted with derision, while his wife, Patricia, offered a knowing smirk that spoke volumes about her disdain. Even the teenagers, my nieces Emma and Chloe, joined in with the casual cruelty of youth raised to believe their last name was a golden ticket to superiority. "But she makes excellent cranberry sauce," Margaret added, her voice syrupy sweet, as if tossing me a crumb of kindness. "Some people are destined for the kitchen, not the boardroom." I smiled sweetly, my lips curving into the practiced expression I'd perfected over 3 years of navigating Harrington family gatherings. "Thank you, Margaret," I said softly. "I do try my best." Under the table, my husband, Christopher, squeezed my hand, a fleeting gesture of support that never quite extended to speaking up in my defense. He'd abandoned that fight 2 years ago, after his father spent an entire Easter brunch lecturing me on why my little marketing job was nothing more than a hobby compared to the real business of the Harrington Empire. The memory stung, but I kept my composure, cutting my prime rib with deliberate precision. "How's the job search going, Sarah?" Patricia asked, her voice laced with fake concern, her eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of someone who thought they'd already won. "Still looking for something suitable?" I met her gaze calmly. "I'm exploring opportunities," I replied, my tone deliberately vague, sidestepping the trap she'd laid. James, never one to miss a chance to twist the knife, muttered loud enough for the table to hear, translation, "still unemployed." The room chuckled again, and Douglas, ever the magnanimous patriarch, waved a hand. Now, he said. "Not everyone can handle the pressure of real corporate work. Sarah's just finding her level." Finding my level like I was water seeking its natural depth, far below the lofty Harrington standard. What they didn't know, what they couldn't even begin to fathom, was that I'd found my level 18 months ago. I'd not only found it, but soared past it, building something extraordinary, something they couldn't imagine in their wildest country club dreams. But I'd made a promise to myself when I started, complete separation between my real life and my Harrington life, until I was ready to reveal the truth. And tonight, as the chandelier's light glinted off the silverware, I felt that readiness stirring deep within me. The conversation, as it always did with the Harringtons, inevitably circled back to their real estate empire, the cornerstone of their identity. Douglas leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with pride. "Speaking of business," he said, "James just closed the Riverside development, a $40 million project." James, ever eager to bask in the spotlight, corrected him with a smug grin. $42 million, actually. The largest mixed-use development in the city. I nodded sincerely. "That's wonderful, James. Congratulations on such an impressive achievement." He looked momentarily surprised by my genuine response, then narrowed his eyes, suspicious of my sincerity. "Yeah, well," he said, "it's what real business people do, make things happen." I agreed, my voice steady. "Absolutely. Building things from the ground up is so important, isn't it?" Margaret turned to Christopher, her tone shifting to one of maternal adoration. "And how's your division doing, darling? Your father says you're up for partner this year." Christopher, finally animated now that the focus was on him, straightened in his chair. "Looking good," he said confidently. "The Peterson acquisition should seal it." Douglas beamed, his chest puffing out with pride. "My boys," he said, both following in the family tradition. Real estate runs in their blood. I turned to my 16-year-old niece, Emma, who was engrossed in her phone. "What about you, Emma?" Any interest in joining the family business? She shrugged, barely looking up. Maybe. Grandpa says I need to prove myself first, get into a good school, show I have the Harrington instinct. I raised an eyebrow. The Harrington instinct, I repeated, letting the words linger. That's important. Douglas nodded gravely. Critical. You either have it or you don't. No offense, Sarah, but it's genetic, like athletic ability or musical talent. Business acumen runs in bloodlines. I nodded thoughtfully, my mind racing. Bloodlines, I said. Of course. The conversation drifted to lighter topics, the club's new golf pro, the neighbor's scandalous divorce, the merits of various Mediterranean islands for summer homes. I played my part, laughing at the right moments, complimenting Margaret's new bracelet, all while my phone sat silent in my purse. I'd turned off notifications for the evening, but I knew what was waiting. Emails from my CEO, messages from the board, interview requests from Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, and TechCrunch, all addressed to Victoria Sterling, the name I'd built my empire under, using my middle name and my mother's maiden name. Suddenly, Emma looked up from her phone. Aunt Sarah, she said, her voice curious, what was your marketing job? The one you got fired from. I corrected her gently. Laid off, along with half the department. Budget cuts. She pressed further. But what did you actually do? I smiled. Digital brand strategy. Chloe, her sister, laughed. That sounds totally made up. I kept my tone mild. Everything sounds made up when you don't understand it. Christopher, ever dismissive, chimed in. Sarah worked for some startup. They ran out of funding. Happens all the time to those tech companies. Douglas nodded authoritatively. 90% failure rate. That's why real estate is king. People always need buildings. I couldn't resist. And people always need technology, I pointed out. Fads come and go, he said, waving a hand dismissively. The internet bubble, crypto nonsense, all hype. Bricks and mortar, that's forever. I tilted my head, my voice calm but pointed. Is that why Harrington property stock is down 12% this year? The table fell silent. Douglas's face reddened, his jaw tightening. Market fluctuations, he said stiffly. Temporary. We're positioned for long-term growth. I nodded. Of course. Though your debt-to-equity ratio might concern some investors, especially with interest rates rising. James's eyes narrowed. How would you know about our debt ratio? I shrugged. Public filings. I like to stay informed. Patricia scoffed. Since when do you read financial reports? I met her gaze evenly. Since always. I just don't usually discuss them at dinner. Christopher stared at me, his expression one of shock, as if I'd sprouted wings. In 3 years of marriage, I'd never once challenged his family's narrative of my inadequacy. Margaret, desperate to diffuse the tension, clapped her hands. Who wants dessert? Sarah made her famous tiramisu. I escaped to the kitchen to plate the dessert, grateful for a moment of peace. Through the doorway, I could hear the Harringtons dissecting my comments. Someone's been reading Wikipedia, James laughed. Probably trying to impress us, Patricia agreed. Poor thing doesn't realize Googling terms doesn't make you a businesswoman. I was arranging the last plate when Emma appeared in the kitchen. Aunt Sarah, she said, her voice hesitant, can I ask you something weird? I smiled. Always. She held up her phone. I was trying to find your old company online, you know, the startup. But I found something else. There's this CEO named Victoria Sterling who looks exactly like you. Like, exactly. My heart stopped, then resumed at double speed. Oh yeah, I said, keeping my tone light. She showed me the screen, my own face staring back from a Business Insider article. She just announced some huge merger. Her company's worth, like, $1 billion or something. Crazy, right? You guys could be twins. I studied the photo carefully. That is a striking resemblance. Emma kept scrolling. It says her name's Victoria Sterling, founder and CEO of Catalyst Solutions. She turned down a $100 million offer from Google last year. Can you imagine? I nodded neutrally. That's quite a story. Her eyes widened as she read further. Oh my God, she's speaking at Davos next month. And she just bought Aunt Sarah. She bought TechNexus. That's the company you worked for. The one that laid you off. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. Coincidence, I said, but Emma wasn't buying it. She typed frantically on her phone. Victoria Sterling, your middle name is Victoria. Your mom's last name was Sterling. I remember from your wedding program. Her voice rose with realization. Aunt Sarah, you're her. You're Victoria Sterling. You're a billionaire CEO, and you've been letting Grandpa treat you like an idiot for 3 years. I sighed. It's complicated. Complicated, she said, incredulous. You own the company that tried to buy Grandpa's business last year. He bragged for months about turning down Sterling Enterprises. I'd forgotten about that. My head of acquisitions had identified Harrington Properties as a potential target, overleveraged, underperforming, ripe for restructuring. I'd killed the deal when I realized whose company it was, but not before they'd made the initial approach. Please don't say anything, I said quietly. Not yet. Emma stared at me, her eyes blazing with excitement. Are you kidding? They've been horrible to you, Grandpa, Dad, even Mom. They treat you like some gold digger who can't hold a job. I nodded. I know. Before I could say more, Chloe burst into the kitchen. Emma, what's taking so? Oh my God, are you looking at Victoria Sterling? I'm obsessed with her. She's like everything I want to be. Did you see she just launched that foundation for female founders? And her style is incredible. She wore custom Dior to the Met Gala. Emma grinned. Chloe, look at the photo, then look at Aunt Sarah. Chloe glanced between her phone and me, her expression shifting from confusion to shock. Wait, what? What? I hissed shoo, but it was too late. Aunt Sarah is Victoria Sterling. Chloe shrieked. The dining room went silent. Chairs scraped, footsteps approached. Christopher appeared first, his face a mix of confusion and concern. What's going on? Why is Chloe screaming? Behind him, the entire Harrington clan crowded into the kitchen doorway. Douglas looked annoyed. Margaret clutched her pearls, and James and Patricia wore matching expressions of irritation. I tried to defuse the situation. The girls are being dramatic about something, I said calmly, though my heart was racing. Dramatic? Emma held up her phone. Grandpa, you know how you're always talking about Victoria Sterling, the tech CEO who tried to buy your company? Douglas's expression soured. That vulture. What about her? Emma grinned. She's standing in your kitchen. The silence that followed was deafening. James laughed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. Right, Sarah's secretly a billionaire. Good one, Emma. Look at the pictures, Emma insisted, shoving her phone at him. James took it dismissively, then froze, his eyes darting between the screen and me. This is some kind of joke. Chloe chimed in. Google it. Victoria Sterling, Catalyst Solutions. Look at the images. Read the bio. Middle name Victoria, mother's maiden name Sterling. Started the company 18 months ago, right after Aunt Sarah got laid off. Patricia snatched the phone, her face cycling through emotions as she scrolled. This can't be real. Douglas's voice was firm. It's not. This is absurd. Sarah can barely hold a job, much less run a billion-dollar company. I set down the dessert plate I'd been holding, my voice steady but firm. Why is that absurd, Douglas? He turned to me, his face red with indignation. Because I know you. 3 years of family dinners, and you've never once shown any business acumen. You got fired from a junior marketing position. Laid off, I corrected, along with 40% of the marketing department, when the new CEO decided to streamline operations. That CEO, by the way, is now looking for a new job himself after I bought his company and reviewed his performance. Christopher's voice was faint. You bought TechNexus? I nodded. Last month. It was undervalued due to poor leadership decisions, like laying off their best talent to make quarterly numbers look better. Douglas blustered. This is ridiculous. If you were Victoria Sterling, why hide it? Why let us mock you, belittle you, tell you repeatedly that you weren't cut out for business? I pulled out my phone, opening my email. Would you like to see the interview request from the Financial Times? Or the board meeting agenda for tomorrow? Maybe the contract to speak at Davos? Margaret sank into a chair, her voice weak. You're serious. Completely. But you make cranberry sauce, she said, as if clinging to the last shred of her reality. I smiled. I also made $300 million last year. Turns out you can do both. James was frantically Googling, his face paling as he read. Jesus Christ. Catalyst Solutions, valued at $1.2 billion in the last funding round. Major contracts with Microsoft, Amazon. He looked up. You turned down Google. I shrugged. Their offer was insulting. $100 million for a company projected to be worth $5 billion in 3 years? Please. Douglas hadn't moved, his worldview visibly crumbling. The Harrington instinct, he said finally. You said business acumen was genetic. I nodded. I did. My mother built her own consulting firm from nothing. My grandmother was one of the first female CPAs in the state. Turns out, business acumen can run in bloodlines that don't have penises attached. Margaret gasped. Sarah. I shrugged. We're all thinking it. Christopher finally spoke, his voice strained. Why didn't you tell me? I turned to my husband, the man who'd never once defended me, never suggested his family might be wrong about my worth. I tried. Remember 6 months ago, when I said I had exciting news about work? You said, that's nice, honey, and went back to talking about your golf game. His face fell. But I would have what? I interrupted. Suddenly respected me? Stood up to your father? Told your family to stop treating me like hired help who happened to marry up. He flinched. That's not fair. I pulled up my phone's photo gallery, scrolling to images from my other life. Here's me at the Fortune 500 CEO Summit. You thought I was at a marketing conference. Here's me ringing the opening bell at NASDAQ when we announced our Series B. You thought I was visiting my sister. Here's me with the President's Council on Technology. You thought I was at a spa weekend. Each photo was a nail in the coffin of their assumptions. Douglas, grasping for moral high ground, said, You lied to us. I shook my head. I told you I was exploring opportunities. I said I was working on something big. I mentioned my interest in technology dozens of times. You just never listened because you decided I was a normal person, someone who didn't need to brag about achievements at every family dinner. I looked around the kitchen at their stunned faces. I gave you 3 years to see me as a person worth respecting, regardless of my net worth. You failed. Emma, who'd been recording everything on her phone, whispered, This is better than Netflix. Douglas's voice cut through the tension. The Sterling Enterprises offer. Last year. That was you. I nodded. My acquisitions team identified Harrington Properties as a potential target, over-leveraged, family-run businesses often are. I killed the deal when I realized it was your company. James demanded, Why? Because, unlike you, I don't believe in destroying family, even family that treats me like the help. Patricia started to protest. I cut her off. Thanksgiving 2021, you asked me to serve the wine because Sarah's so good at that sort of thing. Christmas 2022, I spent 3 hours in the kitchen while you all discussed business, and Margaret thanked me for knowing my place. Easter this year, Douglas made me move tables at the club because the one I chose was for members who matter. Each memory landed like a blow. Tonight's toast, I continued, proof that not everyone's cut out for business. You're right, Douglas. Not everyone is. For instance, someone who overleverages assets in a rising interest rate environment isn't cut out for business. Someone who turns down partnership offers out of pride isn't cut out for business. Someone who judges capability based on gender and marriage status definitely isn't cut out for business. Douglas's voice was cold. Are you threatening us? I shook my head. I'm stating facts. Your company is struggling. You need capital and strategic guidance. Sterling Enterprises is still interested, but now the offer won't be as generous and it comes with conditions. What conditions? He asked. New leadership, starting with the board. Turns out, I do have some ideas about the real estate industry, revolutionary ones, even. The kitchen felt like a pressure cooker, the air thick with unspoken questions. Christopher looked like he might faint. His parents seemed to have aged a decade in 10 minutes, and James and Patricia were still staring at their phones, probably calculating my net worth. But it was Emma who broke the silence. This is the coolest thing that's ever happened in this family, she announced. Aunt Sarah, sorry, Victoria, can I intern at your company? I smiled. When you're 18, I promise. Chloe chimed in, her eyes wide with admiration. Will you teach me? Like, how to build something from nothing? I nodded. If you're willing to learn. Margaret, still reeling, said plaintively, I don't understand. If you're so successful, why stay with Christopher? Why endure our condescension, our mockery, our casual cruelty? I looked at my husband, who seemed to be questioning everything. Because I loved him, I said. And I hoped that, eventually, his family might see value in me beyond my bank account or business success. I wanted to be accepted as Sarah, not as Victoria Sterling. Christopher's voice was quiet. And now? I sighed. Now I realize I was trying to earn approval from people who were never going to give it. You can't respect someone you've decided is beneath you, no matter what they achieve. Douglas spoke, his voice strained. What happens now? I gathered my purse, my coat, my dignity. Now I go home. Tomorrow I run my company. Next week, I close the TechNexus integration. Next month, I speak at Davos. And sometime after that, my lawyers will send over a revised offer for Harrington Properties. You should probably accept it. Christopher's voice trembled. And us? Our marriage. I met his gaze. That's a conversation for later, when you've decided whether you're married to Sarah, the failed marketer, or Victoria, the CEO. Though, honestly, the fact that it matters makes the answer pretty clear. I headed for the door, then paused, turning to Margaret. Oh, and Margaret, the cranberry sauce recipe is my grandmother's. The woman who built her own company in 1963, when people like Douglas wouldn't even let her have a business checking account without a husband's signature. She'd be so proud to know her recipe was served at the table of people who think women aren't cut out for business. The cold December air felt like freedom as I walked to my car, not the sensible sedan Christopher knew about, but the sleek Tesla that Victoria Sterling drove. As I pulled away from the Harrington estate, my phone exploded with notifications. Emma had posted her recording online with a caption, "Watch my billionaire aunt destroy my sexist family with facts and logic." #girlboss, #family drama, #Victoria Sterling. By the time I reached my actual home, the penthouse Christopher had never seen because he'd never asked about my little apartment, the video had gone viral. My PR team was having a meltdown, my board was asking questions, and the financial press was salivating. But for the first time in 3 years, I felt like myself, both versions. Sarah, who made excellent tiramisu, and Victoria, who made excellent business decisions. They were never different people. The Harringtons just couldn't see past their own assumptions to notice. My phone rang Christopher. I let it go to voicemail. Tomorrow, there would be lawyers, decisions, and probably a very public divorce. Tonight, I opened a bottle of wine, the good stuff, not the grocery store brand I brought to Harrington dinners, and toasted my grandmother's picture on the mantel. To knowing your worth, I said, even when, especially when, nobody else does. The city sparkled below my windows, a glittering canvas of possibility and promise. Somewhere in those lights, Douglas Harrington was probably still insisting this was all a mistake, a misunderstanding, a joke. But the market would open tomorrow, and Sterling Enterprises stock would tick up another few points on news of the TechNexus acquisition. The Harrington instinct for business was about to meet the Sterling instinct for justice, and I was ready for the showdown. Please feel free to comment below if you liked this. Remember to like and subscribers for more.